Dude, I want to show you my favorite green to eat that's more nutritious than any plant I know of and you can't find in the grocery store. Let's go on a little adventure. So this is my favorite plant. I love to forage, and I've also planted in our backyard, and it's just an awesome plant to eat fresh, use in teas, dry it, use it in seasonings, and it makes for a really tasty, almost salinity, salty, seaweedy like flavor. So this is stinging nettle. Stinging nettle's right here in this big beautiful patch. This is our backyard patch that we planted 2 years ago, and it's just doing so well. Stinging nettle is one of the first plants to come up in spring, and it is a super nutritious green that helps give you life after a cold hard winter. This is our patch here. This is its second growth. Stinging nettle likes to come back in the fall and push up a bunch of new growth, especially if you cut back a lot of the early spring and summer growth. So this is all the old stinging nettle branches that I had cut back, and then that allowed the plants to have all this space to put up new growth. So you can kind of see really well here. I'm just gonna go through and kind of give this patch a haircut and just trim off all the new growth. One thing with stinging nettle is that along the stem, there are a bunch of little tiny stingers. And the stingers release a little chemical when they poke into your skin, and it can make kind of a burning sensation. So you want to handle them. I usually like to use a glove and then a scissor in my ungloved hand, and I kind of go through and snip them, but there's some hardcore people out there that don't do any gloves at all. Another good way to tell that it's stinging nettle is that the leaves are growing opposite from each other. So they're growing along the stem from the same node along the stem. So it's really easy to tell you have sets of leaves across from each other. So I'm gonna pick a bunch of this. There's a couple spots around the neighborhood I'm going to take you guys to show you guys as well, because this plant just is out of control, especially in my little neighborhood here. There's a bunch of patches I've discovered of nettle. So the fall growth is always a lot less than the spring, but if you cut it all back like I did here with this pile, you end up getting a whole lot of new growth in the fall. I've actually harvested off of this already and have dried a bunch of it. So this is just kind of like the last little push before the hard freeze knocks all this out. All right, I gotta show you something really funny on the other side of this fence, just to show you how well this stinging nettle likes to grow. This garden we got here really is a work in progress, and we're striving to make it better and better and plant more natives. The longer I garden, the more I find that the native plants just seem to do a whole lot better than hybridized plants from the garden center. So we're going to really focus next year on planting out more of these stinging nettles and plants that just seem to do really well, don't take a lot of work. We had a really strong drought this year, and a lot of our natives are doing just great, where a lot of the other plants like our, cucumbers, tomatoes, beans, and other plants just didn't do too great. So we're on the other side of this fence now, and dude, look what we got. I planted the stinging nettle on my side, just on the other side of all of this, and now the neighbors on this side, well, the vacant house, has a bunch of stinging nettle popped up here. So I'm gonna pick some of this while we're here, and it's just like a little win-win-win. I'm hoping to let this patch go to seed and let it do its thing even more. So just more wild food, dude, and I'm not even having to do anything. This house here on the other side of us has been vacant for a while. They just flipped it, but it's been in and out of different ownership, and we've had different neighbors moving in, but it's funny. I'm sure whoever took photos or did tours of this property had no idea that any of this was here, any of it was even edible. So it's kind of cool. A little more for me hopefully if somebody moves in over here, I can give them a little lesson on it, tell them what's up, because it's just a super cool freaking plant that I love to pick a bunch of. And once we pick all this, we're gonna take it back to the kitchen. I'm gonna show you how I like to preserve some of it real simple in the dehydrator, and then we'll make a tea, real simple tea with it. The stinging nettle's so nutritious. I love having it to be able to sip on. Another cool thing about stinging nettle is there's been some really good scientific studies done on it, double-blind placebo-controlled studies, which are like the highest gold standard of science, and showed benefits of allergy reduction, helping with the reduction of allergy symptoms and stuff like that. So I just think that's really cool. And anecdotally, I'll say, eating a ton of fresh stinging nettle this year, my allergies were the best they've ever been. So I don't know if it's completely because of the stinging nettle or some placebo stuff in there, but I really did feel like it was working. So it's something I want to pursue and study more. I know the roots are edible too. I haven't done anything with those. They're used mostly in the medicinal side of things. So playing around with the roots is something I want to get into too. I've picked what I can from this patch. Now let's go check out a larger, older patch of stinging nettle with another really cool wild plant that is growing right above it in the alleyway. I'm gonna cut to when we get over there because, you know, I don't want some weird stalkers trying to figure out where I live and try and come find my house. So we'll see you on the other side. So I wanted to show you some stinging nettle that was at a different stage of its life, putting off its flowers, which will turn into seeds. So you can see when the stinging nettle gets older and taller, it puts off these little tassels that hang down that are the flowers that soon to become the seed heads. And while this isn't the best stage to collect the stinging nettle to be a vegetable or tender, you can still kind of take your hand and strip it all the way up the plant and collect the leaves. And then once it fully puts out the seeds, you're able to go through and collect all your seeds and scatter them in places in the fall that you want stinging nettle to pop up in the spring. And that's a key role that humans would have been playing in our environment, was collecting seeds and spreading plants to different areas, not only for us just to eat, but also in turn benefiting native pollinators. So none of these are ready to go to seed yet. That'll take a couple more weeks. But I just wanted to stop and kind of show you some older specimens of stinging nettle because it looks really different from the spring, summer, and then fall new growth. So this didn't get cut back in the spring. These are the older, full grown plants that put off more growth coming from the older plants. So just kind of a different side-by-side example. I'm just gonna pick what little bit of nettle I can from here that hasn't started going to seed yet, the tender stuff, and then we'll take all this back and I'll show you guys a little tea and how I'm gonna dry it up in the old dehydrator. One of the coolest realizations I've had this year out on my walks, I'm a big morning walker, big walker throughout the day, is just being observant has blown me away. The amount of plants that I've only heard of or been learning about, and then I've actually found just growing here in my quote unquote rough neighborhood around Columbus. I live in a super urban neighborhood, and dude, it just blows me away. The amount of fruit trees, mulberry trees, edible greens, wild alliums that grow all over this neighborhood. And every corner I take it, I seem to find a new plant that I can harvest. Now you want to be careful about where you're harvesting from. Of course, you don't want to be harvesting in heavy dog pee areas or heavy pesticide areas, but I don't think it's something that we should all worry about all too much. Use your use your common sense. But I think like a lot of people stress out more about wild food, and I think that can be an issue. If you're at the grocery store, let's be honest, we don't know where any of that food comes from. And at least with the wild food that you're picking yourself, you're able to get a good idea of where it came from and some of the environmental factors around the place that you're picking from. So let's get this stuff inside and make some tea. All right, here we are in the kitchen with our stinging nettle. I'm gonna take all of this, give it a good rinse in the sink. Now this is gonna be a little character building for me. I'm just going through with my bare hand and cleaning off this nettle. Seems like your fingertips seem to be less aggravated by the nettle, but if it gets to the back of your hand or the inside tender parts of your fingers, whoo, buddy, this stuff freaking sting. All right, got any dirt rinsed off of there. Grab the old pot, stuff it right down in. I'm a bit of a diva when it comes to my water, so for now, until we get our whole home reverse osmosis system, I go to freaking Whole Foods and fill up glass water jugs multiple times a week just so I can have freaking filtered water. So that's what we're gonna use. Because there's a bunch of crap in our water, dude, that just ain't the vibe. So good filtered water is something that I prioritize. I don't even know how much is in here. I'm just doing what feels right. We'll get to judge the potency off of the color. A really good, rich stinging nettle tea will be super dark brown, almost black from the pigment in the stinging nettle. So we're gonna let this boil for 5 minutes and then we'll be back to give it a little tasty taste. All right, it's been boiling for about 5 minutes. It's time to strain it out. Now, if I wanted a much darker color, I would have boiled this and then just let it all sit in there. And over time, this color would have darkened, and I'm not sure that more nutrients would come from the nettle, but I definitely think the color and flavor would develop over time. I'm not exactly sure if that translates to more nutrients though. All right. This is just stinging nettle and water. We're gonna sweeten it up with a little maple syrup. If I had mint, I would have done mint in here. Alan Burgo made a really tasty mint and stinging nettle version of this that had a little maple syrup in here. But the maple syrup just pairs really well with this like really green, vegetal, earthy flavor. We're just gonna sweeten it lightly. We're also gonna do like the lightest touch of lemon juice. Almost an imperceivable amount. It's just enough to like lightly brighten it up. Just a little bit. First, it smells just like it's healthy AF. This isn't necessarily something that I'm like chugging quarts of because it's like chai latte. You know, I'm partially doing this because it's good for me, trying to help with my allergies like we talked about earlier on our adventure. And it's just kind of cool making tea out of plants that you picked, foraged, or grown yourself. I think buying plants like you can at online is totally a thing, and it's valid, it's healthy, it's nutritious. But ones that you have a connection with, you've interacted with, I think nourish us in ways that we can't quite comprehend. So let's give this a little taste. Well, it's like molten lava at this point, but it's got a little bit of salinity or saltiness from the stinging nettle, which is really cool. And the sweetness comes through well. The lemon just brightens everything up. I'm gonna let this cool down a little bit more and just go to freaking town. But I want to show you guys some of the stinging nettle that I have drying. So here is our very not glamorous, but very much used dehydrator and laundry room. So this is where we do our laundry, but where we also dehydrate a lot of our plants. And stinging nettle is one of my favorite plants to dehydrate. Once it's dehydrated, you can use it in soups, you can use it dried and powdered in seasonings. It'll go great with hot water to make a tea for over the winter when I'm trying to get some nice tea, nutrition, allergy benefits out of my life. So that's got another hour in there, and then that'll just go into mason jars with some silica packets to make sure it stays nice and fresh. And check this out, peep, all of my acorns on our drying rack. If you want me to share something about my acorn processing and do a little vlog series on that, dude, I sure can. That's all I got for our adventure today. Thanks for coming along and learning about stinging nettle. If you got something valuable out of this friggin' video and you dig these vibes, like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comments if I should do more of these. I really would love to, and I super appreciate you being here. Until next time, bye, if you cooking.